All right, what are we going to discuss today? On the agenda, we're going to be looking at the generational landscape. Why do we see different generations in the workforce, and what are their numbers? Why are they unique? What makes them unique? What crafted each one of us to be who we are and what we are? And how we can innovate that in our workspace, whether that be in sales for Jamesway or if that's in your poultry operation. So what are we talking about? The generational landscape. As things are changing, as leaders and managers, we start asking the question, why is everybody not more like me? I wish everybody thought like me. I wish everybody acted like me. We will be on the losing side of the equation if that is our philosophy and that is our management style. Baby boomers were born from 1946 to 1964. It was referred to as the me generation. Our ages would be from 72 to 54. We're historically well established in our career and hold positions of power and authority. We were the generation above us was called the greatest generation. Those individuals inspired in the baby boomers, you be a lifelong committed employee to your industry. Your industry will be lifetime committed to you. You go in every day, you do the job, and everything works fine. Those were the exposures from the individuals that experienced the Great Depression of 1929, so they knew that there were real challenges economically, but they also experienced World War II. So they knew that the world could see chaos, and they wanted us to have the best opportunity that could be in our future. Under the baby boomers comes Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980. This is sometimes called the forgotten generation. They be age 53 to age 38. They're established in their career. Many hold positions of power and authority, but they're also the entrepreneurial generation. More IT, communication geniuses and billionaires, from Apple to Uber to every other thought process, historically comes out of Gen X, SpaceX with that technology also. Coming next is Millennials, born after 1980. They are very tech-savvy generation, currently the largest age group in the country, 37 to 23, and they're beginning to come into their own in the workforce, the fastest segment of today's workforce. Boomers were the largest base of human capital to hit planet Earth and work. Now the millennials are going to replace those numbers. It's going to take about 10 more years before we get to that point, but millennials will be the largest workforce in America. So those are the individuals primarily we're working with. Gen Z, born after 1995. This will be my grandson Finn that I'm so proud of. This group is also referred to as the iGen, age 22 down. This generation is right on the heels of the millennials and are starting to enter the workplace very early, right out of college. Their exposure and their level of growth is going to be more so than the millennials just because of the exposures they've had. Let's find out more about each generation. Baby boomers, children are the greatest generation. I meant that. I can remember hearing my father talk about the realities of the 1929 Depression. And coming from an agricultural community, he tried to inspire me and my siblings to find jobs that created a stability that he did not have in an agricultural society. He knew the reality of what it was like to have a bad economy. He also was a young adult during World War II, as most of our parents or grandparents were. They seldom talked about it, but the world was in a state of chaos. There was a sense of pride to step up and do the right thing, but they wanted a simpler time for their children. They became the baby boomer creators because when the war was over and the economy was good, manufacturing was on a rise, they wanted the very best for their children. The parents of baby boomers historically were dual income families, which meant there was more disposable income. They expected us to finish high school and to go on to college, and they expected us to be lifelong dedicated workers to one industry. Gen X comes along. They were called the latchkey generation. These were the first kids of the dual family incomes where mom and dad both worked. So Gen X went to school and they came in and latchkeyed themselves after school and did a lot of hands-on management of their lives. They were the heroes of the 911 attacks and the first responders in the buildings and on Flight 93. So this generation steps up to responsibility. They were the MTV generation. Part of you in the audience remembers the creation of MTV. Part of you do not, but it started to change the way we looked at things. They're active as adults, but they want a happy work-life balance. They're not like boomers. Boomers, we didn't have a problem with a 60 or 70-hour work week. We wanted to be productive. We wanted to continue putting our shoulder to the grindstone. Gen X was the first generation to say, wait a minute, there's got to be a balance. I don't want to live at work. How can I be productive, yet how can I find something more? I mentioned earlier, they have a broad base of entrepreneurial tendencies. They were the IT geniuses. They were the IT giants that grew the West Coast technology and gave us social media and other opportunities. Their ambition, they were a lot into drive and startup companies. So a lot of the Ubers I mentioned earlier, or the Airbnb, things that we historically never did, this generation helped create and put on the map. Millennials, children of boomers, dual income, advanced degree, white collar parents. We took it from agricultural world into a white collar world. More and more of the boomers had positions of power, and because of that, and authority, because of that, that gave you more disposable income to expose your children to better exposures. We're between 19 and 5 years old during 9/11. The 9/11 attack written, shaped, and shook the world. It caused everybody to think differently about what was going to be the new norm moving forward. This generation was very young and very impressionable. So the sense of security that the boomers got post-World War II, excluding the Cold War, the millennials were starting to say, wait, maybe this is not the case. Maybe there's going to be some instability here. So that had a shaping part of their life. Unlike my generation, every single millennial who had the means was born with a computer in their home. You didn't walk over to the bookcase and pull out the Encyclopedia Britannica or World Book and thumb through to get information. You immediately went to the computer and you went and found the resource, and that gave you a broader base of knowledge much earlier. Like the greatest generation, they did experience economic instability. The Great Recession, 2009 through 2009, 2010, we faced globally more unemployment, more foreclosed homes, more layoffs, and more shutdowns than any other generation has. It had a shaping impact. Those millennials went home to the dinner table at night, and they heard their parents who were either going to be laid off or furloughed or shut down or possibly lose their home say, whatever you do something different than I did. Don't follow my path. And that was a shaping tool to young people to look at the leaders in their family dynamics and see concern and fear. Parents advised change companies regularly. My father advised me, he said, look, and I told you guys he was a Baptist minister. He said, find a career that isn't dependent on the economy. Find something that people always need. I said, Dad, what would that be? He said, you can either get into food preparation or alcohol. I said, hey, great, and we'll have a bar. He was not very crazy about that idea. So I got into the food industry. In the 40 years that I was working for a broiler producer, we never had a layoff. We never had a down day. Production always went on. But I changed how I advised my children. I said, you have a great educational advantage from what I had. You've had global travel experience. You know the world is broader, it's bigger. Take your assets, continually improve them, and every 3 to 5 years, reevaluate where you want to be in life and take the skill set and market it to get the best return, whether that be financial or other stimulus. Make sure you do what you need to do. Finally, the bottom one there, social media creates new communication. Guys, that is not a bad thing, no matter how much baby boomers kind of scoff at it. There is no better thing than being able to communicate broader. The millennial generation may have a difficult time at times having a conversation at the dinner table without being on the electronics, but they are talking to people around the globe, and they're sensing how our world is changing. Those were things that shaped millennials. Let's look at Gen Z, the next generation. Not only did they have a computer in their home, which was handy, they had the internet since birth. So if you wanted knowledge, you didn't just pull what was in the data bank of the computer, you got global access. Did you get good quality access? Not always. You've got to use a filter. But they had that at their fingertips. They are proficient in all forms of social media communication. David Hammond is in LinkedIn, so join me if you're out there on LinkedIn. That's the only thing I participate. But my wife loves to be on Facebook because that's where the children and grandchildren were. So she could see what was going on at home and, in theory, what was going on with children and grandchildren. Social media has moved. We have the ability to tweet on Twitter. We can see that at our higher levels of government. We also have Snapchat. We also have Instagram. And those are just the starting points. Once the boomers learn as to how to communicate, the communication channel changes. So it's a constant chase. But individuals, particularly Gen Z, they're constantly communicating with electronic media. That's a positive, yet it also can be a negative. Post 9/11 homes find a greater feeling of safety staying at home. Where do you think we got Apple TV? Where do you think we got streaming? Where do you think we got Netflix? Why did all that come in? It's great technology. I love both of them. But it came because of a lot of the fear from the 9/11 events and other events that were negative in anger around our planet. Just, I'd rather be at home. I know where I'm at home. I got what I need at home. I'm comfortable at home. So we started driving the Gen Z generation into streaming more. I made the observation to my peers this morning. As we went past a cable company up here in Canada, I said, that's not going to exist in 10 years. I said, right now, Elon Musk with SpaceX is proposing to put satellites all around the globe so that the isolated areas and communities that don't have internet coverage will have it. That means we're still changing. We're still migrating. Post-Great Recession homes, if you were in a family that lost a home, or if you were in a neighborhood that had empty homes, and you saw something that you had never seen before, those visions change you, and they shape you, and they will shape Gen Z. Finally, high student debt, more receptive to social politics. I was an elected official for 15 years. I did enjoy the debate and the conversation. I am not crazy about politics, but it does shape our world. And when we see in this next 2020 election in America, different selections out there on the table, we're amazed at how diverse they are. They're diverse because a different generation is coming in and they expect more. If we've bailed out the automotive industry, if we've bailed out the banking industry, if we've bailed out the home loan industry, when do I get mine? So more people who are carrying trillions of dollars of student debt are saying, when do I get mine? So you're going to see politics change. Let's see what that looks like in the labor market, because that's really what we're talking about here. The labor force today. You can see the statistics there, and if y'all will excuse me, I'm going to get where I can see it better. Number of workers in millions, the U.S. labor force. 56 million are millennials. 53 million are Gen X. 41 million is now what baby boomers. Look to the next slide, and I hope that shows up clearly. Look how it has changed and migrated from 1994 to 2017. Baby boomers made up 50% of the labor force in 1994. We're down to 25% now, and that's going to shrink. Millennials didn't exist in 1994 in the labor force. They now represent 35%. So these people are going to be working at our hatcheries, at our plants, in our communities. doing many things, we better be able to communicate and have relationships. Look at Gen Z, it's already up to 5%. And that's 2007 data, folks. That has changed in just 2 years. This has an immediate impact on what managers need to lead their people. As managers, we have to be productive. We have to continue to give hatcher fertile, mortality issues, cost scenarios, and produce, and labor is key to that. So how do we find a way to motivate and retain? The labor force for tomorrow. You see the 16 to 24 bracket, the 25 to 54 bracket, the 55 to 65, and the 65 to 74. You got 1994, a decade later, 2004, a decade later, 2014, and a decade later, which is only 5 years away, 2024. Look how your numbers are shifting and changing. The number of younger workers, 16 to 24, is dropping. It's dropped almost 20% in 4 decades. Look at 25 to 54. That is normally the mean. That is normally the sweet spot in labor. It's staying basically the same, 83, 81, 82. So that's going to be your bulk. It's going to stay basically the same. Look at 55 to 64. Because the boomers are growing older, that level is going out. Now you've got an additional 2% in that age bracket in the next 5 years that are going to be working. Look what happens 75 and older. You're going from 8% to 10.6%. We're going to have millennials coming in, but we're still going to have boomers going out, which means one of our options is an older workforce. So how do we utilize people who have age restrictions, either physical or mental, and still keep them in the equation? BMW North America just did a multi-billion-dollar expansion in South Carolina. They created one line that existed of 65 in age and up, and compared that to every line in Germany and the South Carolina. Everybody on the production line 65 and up. How do you think it did?
I honestly don't know.
It had greater efficiency than any other line, but you couldn't do it without modification and change. They changed the positions to sitting positions where they could, cushion floors where they could, and flex scheduling. Sometimes you were split shifting. You were changing what you always did and doing something a little bit different. As we move into 2024, 5 years away, we will have to start asking in our hatcheries, how do I use the older workforce and how do I use the younger workforce? America's workforce will be older than it is today, so don't ignore that fact. It is a valuable tool in your tool bag. This should be on the minds of executives, and it should be on the minds of future leaders. The labor force is changing. It's up to us as innovative managers and proactive leaders to navigate the change. We can sit back and say, I'm not changing. I don't want this. I want it to go back the way it was. And the only thing you're going to find is frustration. You're not going to be productive. Your numbers won't be in the top in the cost, and neither will any of your metrics that you use for measurables. So you as the leader need to start the change, not the labor, the leader. I want to adapt. How can I do better what I've been doing all these years? Let's capitalize on the uniqueness. Each generation has a reason why they are unique. Baby boomers, they have a willingness to continue working. It provides opportunities for mentorship and a heightened retention of experienced workers in consultant type or part-time roles. Folks, I got to thinking about this in 2014. I heard a great speaker down at Amelia Island in Florida. He was speaking to an elected official group about energy. His name was Peter Zehan. He wrote a book called The Accidental Superpower. He made some statements in 2014 that caught me so far off guard, I scoffed from the back row. And he looked up. He obviously heard me. We talked afterward. He said, David, this is going to happen. This is reality. This is math. These are numbers. And what he tried to do was look at the geopolitics. What is the age of the population in each country? And how will they improvise? I found myself in 2014 still working in that 40-year career and was fairly certain that when I finished that career, I would go to the beach or I would go to the mountains and I would sit back in a chair and enjoy life. I did that for 2 days and I said, this ain't for me. I really want to make a difference. I want to still be involved. I still got a mind. I can still think. I can change my small piece of the world. And thank goodness Jamesway said, hey, we've got a role for you. We've got some great salesmen, a great sales team, but my goodness, we sell hatcheries, incubation equipment, and you've done that your whole life. You can probably bring something to the table that we're missing. Now, I promised them a next 40-year career. I'm not sure I'll be able to deliver on that, but that's my promise anyway. But they reached back and found an experienced worker who still wanted to make a difference. Gen X, the ability and the eagerness to fill the leadership vacuum made from retirement of boomers. They're willing, they're skilled, but they still don't want to be hung out on the road. They want to know there is a boomer still out there who remembers the project in 1980 and the pitfalls of that project and can share. Hey, don't do that. Or, yeah, by all means, do this. So they're going to step up, but they like to know that there's a wisdom loss. It's not complete, that there's still some wisdom out there. Millennials, exposure to new ways of thinking and technology provides a source of innovation to stagnant or older industries. Our industries need innovation. We're bringing on single stage technology, which is the best technology on the planet. We're bringing in higher degrees of information through our controllers that made my world easier to operate in. We're going to be bringing in new processes for ventilation in hatcheries that we've never thought about before that will make it easier. And we're going to be bringing in new communication lines, whether it be Ethernet or fiber optic cable going to a HatchCon system that gives a manager the information he needs, not only at his computer screen, but in his hand, in his portable device, whether he's in leisure or whether he's working. That's coming from individuals who are thinking about technology and what we can do. Millennials say, hey, you could do this way. Have you thought about doing this? This is what the technology will do. Britton showed me, he said, hey man, we can put all that on a computer. You don't need all those pieces of paper. I got to get past the comfort zone, but he's right. I've got more database there. Older industries have to start asking the question, how can we do it better? And millennials are the best asset available to give us that thought. Gen Z, what is Gen Z bringing to us? They're bringing a heightened belief in inclusion and diversity of people and thought, holds corporations and governments to a higher standard of social equality and connectivity. Folks, I'm glad to tell you this. There are no places in society for the prejudice we have held in the past. We need to let those go and move into a more inclusionary process. Why? Millennials and Zs do. They don't question. They don't see what we saw. And because of that, you've got a greater brain trust sitting at the table. I wish everybody could see all the unique people sitting at our sales table this week and all the great things I've learned from people all over the globe who think a little bit differently, respond a little bit different. So inclusion is going to be it's going to be critical. Leadership vacuum. Younger workers are ready to take the reins, but they want support from their experienced workers so that they don't lose all the knowledge. Mentorship is critical. Start thinking about it in your hatchery. Who is the person that has hit the 40-year mark or maybe the 50-year mark? And he can or she can remember clearly why that worked that way. Is there an opportunity to find a role for them to play in the future? Racially and ethnically diverse, workers are becoming more and more diverse and aware of cultural differences. This provides an opportunity for innovation through diversity of thought. I think better and more clearly when I'm challenged by somebody who looks at the world differently than I do. I do think I'm always right. That's a curse I've had to struggle with my whole life. But the more I expose myself to diversity, the more I start thinking a little differently. Increasingly female, and when you go to Peter Zeehan's book and you start looking at the global population numbers, we are going to continue for the next 2 decades with a 51-49 female to male ratio. That's planet Earth. That is not America. That is not Canada. That's planet Earth. It's holding true. It's going to continue to do so. The workforce is more female. Strong employers should innovate on opportunities to engage and utilize working moms and single moms. Special challenges. How do we do things differently so that we can get that diversity of thought into our workplace? Focus on social impact. Younger workers want to know the business leaders will make a positive impact on the world. I don't know how many of you out there watching remembers the hit piece that was done by 60 Minutes back in the 1980s where they tore the poultry industry apart. I did not think we actively responded to that. And how do you actively respond to that? You rebrand yourself. As I deal with my peer group, and my peer group doesn't come from an agricultural background, as I deal with my peer group, I remind them I'm not in the poultry industry. I'm in an industry that feeds the world. We produce more high-quality, low-cost protein that totally eliminates world hunger around the globe than any other industry. And I'm proud to do that. I'm very pleased to know that the things that I did every year made somebody's life better because they had the ability to eat a healthier diet that gave better strength in mind. So as we move with Millennials and Zs, let's rebrand ourselves. We're not the poultry industry. We're not the turkey industry. We're not the duck industry. We are the industry that feeds the planet. We need to start making that our mantra. Engagement and flexibility matters. Workers want flexible work options to find a good balance in life. Boomers and millennials want to have opportunities to grow and develop at work. Britain will not want to be a 60-hour employee, a 70-hour employee. He won't want to just come home and say, are the kids in bed? He'll want to have soccer and softball and baseball and whatever opportunity dance comes along. He will want to be engaged. That's what will give you something quality in your life. Everybody needs that. We need to find a way to engage that and be more flexible in our thought. Well, can't do that. It takes 21 days to hatch a chick. We've got to start at 6 a.m. and we go until we get done. We need to find ways to be creative in our thought process. What can we do that adds something to everybody's life? Recruiting. Remember this. I said I had perfect attendance at my Calhoun facility. I mentioned that I had no turnover since the 90s. Those were great things. That is not true with our industry. Become a competitively paying industry. Nobody should take pride in being the cheapest industry. Let me give you some advice here, folks. A cheap chicken isn't good, and a good chicken isn't cheap. That's how I managed for 40 years. I didn't want to be the cheapest. I wanted to be the best. I wanted people to ask for my product specifically. And I tried to create that desire with everybody we did. We had the best cost in the top 20, but we wanted to produce the best. So as an industry, we better stop being the cheapest industry and try to be the best. And if that means robotics, if that means nanotechnology, whatever advancement that needs, so that we can still meet our bottom line, we need to be proactive in doing that. We need to create the industry brand. I cannot say that enough. We feed the world. We feed the world. We feed the world. Why would we not claim that? Become aligned with Millennials and Gen Z in terms of purpose, culture, and professional development. I like to go to high schools and middle schools back home and talk about our industry and not just talk about entry-level roles. I wanted those individuals to know there were great careers that went as high as the CEO of companies. Sure, you have to pay your due. You have to buy in. You have to understand the process. But we all did that hoping to get here. So you want to lay that out so that it seems like a reality. Professional development. What opportunity can we do with Millennials and Zs to create communication 101 that Boomers did? Britton, I like to have a conversation.
Okay. Okay.
I like to talk with people face to face and say, man, what are you thinking? How does this work? Why is this not working? What's your thoughts on that? Most millennials in most of these are more comfortable with technology communication. And because they do that, they understand value based on how many likes they get, how many shares they get, and that's instant gratification because as soon as you post it, you immediately get feedback. Well, that wasn't a good thought. I don't need to do that anymore. Or that was great. We can do the same thing by talking generation to generation, a 60-year-old talking to a 20-year-old, saying, this is how we have these conversations. And you know, it isn't uncomfortable to look eyeball to eyeball with each other and smile occasionally and frown occasionally. Those are good tools, but that has to be learned. You have to learn that skill. You can learn it with a good mentor who is flexible enough not to be so rigid that they can't understand the other point of view. So we've got to be aligned with Millennials and Gs in terms of culture and professional development. We've got to share real examples of professional development and leadership opportunities. We've got to offer mentorships. And when we do this mentorship, we've got to think, what else can I offer in recruiting that is out of the norm? Well, okay, freelancing. Yeah, here's where our hatcheries work. Here are the timetables. I'm willing to split shift this. You come in the morning because you have child care opportunities. You come in the evening because you don't. We haven't done it that way, but can we make this work in a cost scenario? We've got to look at freelancing and contracting. Quality control is a good example. Quality control is critical in a hatchery, whether you're doing 10-day candles, 21-day residues, egg pack analysis, specific gravities, whatever you're doing, it needs to be done. Can I freelance that? Can I contract that out rather than having an employee? Will that work? Engaging, communicate constantly, assist those with the lack of confidence and the lack of communication skills. Talking is not easy. It is for me. But for most people, it isn't easy. You have to learn that. You have to develop that. I mentioned, again, one more time, I'm going to bring it up. My dad was a Baptist minister. Where are you going to learn to communicate? Standing with the minister at the back door of the church, talking to everybody who comes through. You do that early enough, that's just what you do. We may not use the same verbiage. We may not be talking about the same subject matter, but we're going to have a conversation. Successful companies will create special role for older workers, mentors, coaches, subject matter expert. I want to talk about hatcheries. Who's done that? I sell stuff to hatcheries. Who's been in a hatchery? Who understands the dynamics of a hatchery? That would be a subject matter expert or processing, milling, whatever. Think outside of the box. Lose statements and thoughts. We've always done it that way, or we've never done it that way. Folks, that does not work for me now. That did not work for me 40 years ago. The worst thing in a meeting was for somebody to say, well, we've always done it that way. Well, that's not good. That's not. Let's lose those thoughts. Add diversity to your labor pool, gender, age, race, sexual orientation. It will change how you think and act once you engage with people who are not a mirror image of yourself. And great things come from that. Offer continual learning opportunities. Millennials and Zs will constantly want to learn. They have had access to the computer. They've had access to the internet. They don't want to reach a plateau and stop. So they're going to constantly learn. How can we do that in the industry? We bring new technology. We bring it in great single-stage incubation. And you've never had it at your hatchery. Somebody's got to mentor you on how it works, and then you've got to show others how it works. And by doing that, you're causing people to learn more. Hey, well, single stage, pardon me, single stage is different than multi-stage. I have to do that differently. Why would I? Well, it produces better quality results. That's why you would. So thinking and learning, challenge employees to listen with an open mind. Retaining, I can't stress this enough. Support younger workers with experienced mentors. Remember this to your core. It is easier and more cost-effective to retain an employee than to train a new employee. You lose money, you lose time, you lose efficiencies if you're constantly having to hire somebody. Find out what it takes for me to keep Britton. Britton, how can I keep you on, bud? You've done a great job. What will it take? Well, I can't do that, but how about this? Work to create a retention program. Offer creative, family-friendly benefits, child care assistance. Financial planning. Why would we not want to offer financial planning? Even though the wage rate is fairly low, why would you not want to manage that resource as wisely as you could? Why, as a company, don't we bring in some financial planners? It's not cost prohibitive. Bring them in to help people manage their budgets. Create a budget. Some people have never seen a budget. Brittany here is getting married very quickly. You better sit down with a budget, bud. That's key to life, let me tell you. Organize, and pet insurance. Let me say a little bit about pet insurance. You're like, what are you talking about, pet insurance, David? Millennials are getting married later. They're having fewer children. They love their pets. Pet cost for health care is unbelievable, but you still love your pet. Pet insurance is almost nothing in cost. Why would we not bring that into our benefit package if it inspires the next generation of worker, gives them a sense of comfort, and makes them happier, which makes them more productive, which makes them more creative, which makes us more money? Why would we not do that? We got to think about that. I stole that idea from another company that was doing it and doing it well. Organized group activities, on-site entertainment, or health improvement options. Yoga at the Hatchery? What are you talking about? What you talking about, David? Yoga at the Hatchery. It can be anything. Let's get healthier. Let's get more active. David needs it more, and I certainly need it as I age. Why would we not try something that has not been done before? Remember and practice diversity and inclusion, D&I. It matters to the new workers, and it should to the existing ones. Remember and practice corporate social responsibility. As a company, and we did it at Pilgrims, are you getting greener? Are you finding ways to save on energy? Number one, it saves money. Number two, it helps the environment. What can we do differently that makes things? Those are all recruiting, engaging, and retaining tools.